everyone and welcome back to the Bare Thread. So I've done a bit more sewing. So this is a very like autumnal looking jumper for my son who is 4. So this is like an age 4 sized one. So this is the Waves and Wild Adventurer Raglan sweater, and it comes with 3 different neckline options. So you have a single opening and neckline where you put a couple of buttons and it just opens like asymmetrically, so it just opens with one opening. And then you also have the double opening, so it'd be a symmetrical sweater with like 2 openings down here. And then you have this, oh my gosh, I can't remember what the name of it is. I'm going to call it a cowl neck. It is not a cowl neck. I can't remember what it's called anyway. So you have to have the single opening to do this, and then it has like a high neck that you would then roll over. So the opening, I've put 4 buttonholes and 4 buttons, and then when you roll it over you just wouldn't fasten up the top 1 or 2 buttons, and it would kind of look a bit more like that. So a couple of the buttons are visible. Whether you would really need to open all the buttons or any of the buttons to get it on and off, I don't know, depends on the child's head, I guess. But yeah, it's a fairly simple pattern because it is basically just like a raglan sweater. So you just have a front and back, the sleeves, you've got the sleeve cuff, which I did in a contrasting or complementary colour, I don't know, a fabric. And then you've got the waistband here, which I did in the same orange. I was umming and ahhing as to whether to do that in the kind of grey green colour, but in the end I just kind of wanted to use up as much of the orange as I could, because I'm just getting really annoyed of having all these like bits of fabric left over. So I spent far too much time deliberating that, did it in the orange, and now kind of wish I'd done it in the other colour. I did the neck in the other colour, and that was like intentional. That was always my plan from the beginning, because I thought it would look quite fun, and I do think it does. And I was quite pleased when I bought this fabric that I got the orange colourway, and then it had like this kind of like grey green colour. I don't know how to describe the colour really, but that it also has the same kind of green, light and dark green stripes, and then the orange stripes as well, so it does kind of match the orange fabric. I thought that would look quite good together. So the more complicated part of this, that makes it more complicated and more interesting than just a sweater, is obviously the opening with the buttonholes. So buttons and buttonholes always make it more difficult, and also then the kind of higher neck as well. I mean, the high neck is not actually that complicated. It is just like 2 rectangles of fabric sewn together, and then you attach, and then you just have to add the buttons. So really it's the buttons and the buttonholes that make it more complicated, and you do iron in some interfacing underneath where the buttons would go as well to stabilise it, which just adds an extra step. That always kind of annoys me because I don't have an iron where I sew, and it's just such a pain to get the iron out that I'm a bit lazy. I do have like a small iron for seams. So my boyfriend bought me this, and it's like just a little diddy little iron. It's quite cute. But it's kind of annoying because the stand that it has to go on is like this really flimsy thing, and I have like melted the plastic of it when the iron dropped onto there. It doesn't stay on its little stand very well. It tends to sort of spin round. The cable's not very long either. And it doesn't really get like hot enough to properly iron anything. It is really more for seams, but it's still just, a real iron does a much better job. I guess it also has more weight to it as well, whereas with that one I feel like I'm having to press down a lot more. So I'm a bit lazy with the iron-on interfacing, and I do just tend to sort of hold it in place, and if I'm going to sew around that area anyway, that like it'll get sewn in and it'll be fine. And it kind of works and kind of doesn't. So yeah, the construction of the sweater was fairly straightforward, and then it's just the working out the number of the buttons you want and the placement, and then doing the buttonholes and then sewing the buttons on. So I will say that, like, sort of slightly strangely, because Waves and Wild patterns are usually pretty thorough and like give you a lot of detail, it's quite light on the detail of the buttons. It doesn't tell you how many to add, because I guess as the garment gets bigger and the child gets bigger, you might want to add more buttons, and it's all kind of up to you as to like what size to use. Although you don't have a ton of room there, but like what buttons you want to use, what size to use, how many. So they don't give you really like clear instructions on how many buttons you would need to buy and stuff. I thought that 4 worked quite well, and I went all the way up, and the 4 just seemed to fit quite nicely. I used these sort of yellowy orange flower shaped buttons. I opened up my button box and I've got like loads in there, and I found some really like nice ones, but I just didn't have 4 of them. And these were really the only ones that I had like a set of 4 left, and then they're kind of the right colour. They're a little bit more yellowy, but I thought they were kind of cute with the flowers. I don't know if they totally go, but like I said, they were just the only ones that I had enough of. And I did feel like 4 was the right number. So I'm kind of pleased with how the buttonholes went. I have made this top already, but it's going to be a gift. And I did the buttonholes the wrong way round. So those buttonholes are so not straight. It's very frustrating. But if you see that I did the buttonholes so that they are kind of vertical, so they're going to go down the top like this. And that's how I think they're supposed to go, and I got that from like zooming in really close on one of the pictures in the pattern. But because the pattern doesn't really give you any instructions on the buttonholes, well, very minimal instructions, on the other version that I made, I did them horizontal, and I now realise that was a mistake, because even when I was doing it, it felt like there wasn't enough room to fit them across where the interfacing lay. So I thought that was quite strange. And then I struggled to get them in a straight line as well, and that was like an unrelated problem. That wasn't entirely a me problem, really. I also didn't go high enough up, so when I did the buttons before on the other version, I've only done them like below the neckline, and I kind of didn't think to do them up here, even though it does kind of tell you to do that in the pattern. I just realised that when I read it the first time, I didn't understand what it was telling me to do. So it's a bit frustrating because that one is the gift. That one is, the buttons are much worse than these, and these are not bad. The buttonholes went reasonably well. I did struggle a bit because it was hard to get the fabric, especially the thicker fabric up to the top where there's an extra layer of fabric. I mean, it's not actually that thick, but it was hard to get it under my buttonhole foot, and I think the buttonhole foot kept kind of slightly falling out of place, which is just like a bit of a problem with my machine. So it kind of kept, the fabric kept sticking as it was going through, and then it would stop halfway when it was doing the buttonhole. But generally speaking, they're pretty good, and I think they will just about hold up. The buttons are quite fiddly, probably because they are flower shaped, but also because I think that they are like a little bit close to the edge of the fabric. Makes it actually a bit fiddlier to like get them in the buttonholes. So my son will probably struggle a bit with these, but that's okay because we can just do them for him. And like I said, I don't think we'll have it all buttoned up, and if you unbutton a couple of them, I don't know that you would need to unbutton all of them to get his head in and out, but we'll see. So yeah, the buttonholes are the hardest part, and they are the bit that is the least well done. But I did a pretty good job, and I'm pretty pleased with it, and it is a better job than I did on the first attempt, slightly frustratingly, but not surprisingly. But yeah, I do like the pattern, and I do like that it is a little bit more interesting than just a sweater, like a plain sweater. The fabric, as I mentioned, is from Minerva Crafts, and it is a John Lurden fabric, I think, and it is a sweatshirting, and it just feels like so nice and soft and warm and snuggly. And I just think, especially with the colour, I think this is like a perfect jumper for autumn. And he does love the colour orange. It was his clear favourite colour for a long time, but now his favourite colour is rainbow, obviously. We didn't have any rainbow print, otherwise I would have probably got him that. But yeah, that is the finished Adventurer Raglan top for my 4-year-old. So let me think. Yeah, let me think. Let me know what you think in the comments, and give me a like and subscribe.